Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating a vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today's guest is a professional tennis player, Victoria Duval. I'd like to welcome her onto the show. How are you doing today, Victoria?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yes. I know that the listeners are dying to hear from you and about your journey. Just before we dive in, Victoria, just give us a little background on yourself so they can know where you're coming from.
Yeah, so I currently live in Florida. That's where I train for my tennis. And I was born in Miami. I have two brothers. My family's originally from Haiti, so I spent most of my childhood in Haiti. And then we've lived in the United States since 2003, I believe, pursuing my tennis dreams.
Okay. Now, your family's from Port-au-Prince. How did you fall in love with tennis? Was tennis like a big thing in Haiti?
Yeah, tennis. Well, I have two older brothers who played, and I watched them play and kind of fell in love with it through them. And ended up playing a tournament in Santo Domingo when I was 7 years old, and I won it. And that kind of solidified my path to start taking tennis seriously. So it kind of all started around the age of 7.
Wow. It is always a blessing to find your purpose or to find your passion at a young age. Did you play any other sports prior to that in order to get you geared up for tennis? Was it just tennis was the first thing you fell in love with it?
I did ballet before I played tennis, so that was kind of my passion before realizing that tennis was the route I wanted to take. So naturally, when you win a tournament, when you're that young, you kind of start to rethink about what you want to do. And with my brothers playing as well and getting some inspiration from them, it was a pretty easy decision for me to let go of the ballet and focus on tennis when I was 7.
Mm. Now, obviously, being a part of a dance studio, you have a background of like a community. You're in a dance studio, you're learning with people. How do you go from being in an environment where you're with a group of people learning and training and working towards a common goal to now being that single athlete on the field? How does it feel to be to wear different hats now?
Um, as far as training, it's not too different. The training that's accompanied with doing a team sport is similar to an individual sport in many respects if you're in an academy. So I haven't, experienced much change in that regard because I'm always surrounded by a lot of tennis players where I train, and we're generally a pretty big group. So there's a lot of emotional support as well where I train. I think the only difference would be, being out there on the court by yourself when you're competing. So, I'm somebody that's generally very independent, and I like to analyze things on my own and problem solve. So, transitioning from that was not very hard for me at all. And I really appreciate being out there and having to solve my own problems on the court.
Mm. Now, you mentioned about you have two brothers. Are they older than you?
Yes, I'm the youngest.
Okay, the youngest. So how does it feel being the youngest? How do you have your voice? Like, how did you gain your voice? I know obviously you're falling in love with a sport. I know sometimes the middle child is the one or the older child, but sometimes the younger one kind of gets deprived a little bit. So how did you feel about that?
I have a very good relationship with my brothers, and I appreciate that a lot. So, I think for me, I've always felt the support from them to chase after my dreams in tennis. And obviously, with them going through the tennis path as well, they had a lot of wisdom to tell me, to guide me along the way in my junior career and even in my professional career as well. So, I think in many ways, I'm very fortunate to have a family that totally believes in me and has been willing to sacrifice whatever they need to help me achieve my dreams. And so I'm very grateful for that because I know a lot of athletes and players don't necessarily have that support system.
Mm. That is something. Support is very important. And obviously you mentioned about the fact that you work on yourself and you mentally kind of get yourself geared up, even though you're saying that the training is somewhat as a group, but then when you get on the field, it's just you. How do you mentally prepare yourself for these matches? I mean, tennis is very competitive, and more importantly, is you have to that this training. How do you get ready through training, and how do you get ready for your events?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the time that you put in your training, you just have to be confident that you've put in the necessary work to do well in competition. When you go and compete, everything else is sort of out of your hands. You just hope that you dedicated enough time in your training that you can go out there and do well. So as far as competing, I mean, I think for me, I just go back to my routines. A lot of my routines are listening to music before I compete and really getting into a calm headspace and feeling ready to go out there and do well. Like you said, it's very competitive. It's very stressful environment. Everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to do well. So it's really about calming those thoughts. And for me, that's generally playing a lot of music before I play.
Now, if I may ask, who's your favorite artist to listen to before you actually get into this match?
I have a very non-traditional answer. Every time someone asks me that, I listen to a lot of movie soundtracks and classical music. So, any classical great, Mozart, Beethoven, Vivaldi, any one of those I listen to. Also the Avatar soundtrack, any kind of big production movie soundtrack seems to really get me in the focus that I need to compete. I know it's a little non-traditional, but hey, it works for me.
I think you've mentally tapped into something that some athletes might not even think is a place. I think that you're putting yourself in the mindset of that what you're about to do is just as big as this film, is just as big as this soundtrack. You're not indulging in something very small and very like just let me just play something. You're actually having a significant amount of purpose. So I commend you on that. And do you feel that you have utilized your dance background to help you out with tennis? I know that dance is a fundamental in which a lot of sports now is trying to implement, such as like maybe in football. Do you feel like your rhythm or your weight distribution and things that you learned while you were in dance, do you think it's contributed to your success on the field?
There's probably some things that subconsciously I'm not aware of that have helped me with my tennis career. I can't think of anything consciously that has helped me. I think I'm naturally a pretty flexible person, so that helps me as far as my movement and stuff on the tennis court. So I think, in dance, obviously, you have to have a lot of coordination and discipline to remember what you need to do. So I think as far as being a coordinated athlete, I think I've benefited from that with having the dance background. But as far as that, it was such a small part of my career. And I think it was so long ago. I stopped dancing when I was 7. So there's probably some benefits that I'm not completely aware of. I'm sure they're there in the background.
So that transition happened at the same time. So you stopped dancing, and that's when you won that match at 7.
I won the tournament at 7 and then subsequently decided that I wanted to focus all my attention on tennis. Yes.
Mm. Now, when it comes to your athletic background, is there anything within the culture, having the family being from Haiti and Port-au-Prince, is there anything that you feel like your culture has kind of helped encourage you and inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of Haitian pride associated with being from Haiti or having Haitian blood. So I think we're a nation of very strong people. And that's something that has been told to me a lot of times is, your heritage is very strong. You come from a line of very brave, courageous people. And so I think a lot of times when I'm going through adversity, I remember that. And I remember my ancestors who, overcame tremendous hurdles in history, and kind of using that to fuel me and say, this is my lineage. Like, I'm a strong person. I can do this. So I definitely rely on that occasionally.
And when you started off with so you were in school originally in Florida, is that correct, right? Did you go to your undergrad while you were down there as well?
I studied online. I've been just homeschooled my whole tennis career. So currently, I'm enrolled in Indiana University East, and I'm graduating in December with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and Economics. So that's something that I started my college journey in 2015. So my whole academic career has been online, which is a little bit fascinating to some people, but it's just something that I've been used to my whole career because of the demands of training and traveling. I mean, there's just no way that I would have been able to go to school on campus with the volume that I was doing.
Yo, wow, 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 wow. How do you juggle in all of this? You know, it seems like from the training to the competitions, the matches, to then online schooling. You know, how do you feel about juggling all of that? How do you actually make it work?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some days that are more difficult than others. I think I'm really grateful that I'm somebody that has generally pretty good time management. And so I like to work ahead in my schooling as well. And grades are a very important part of my academic career. I fully intend on graduating with honors, and it kind of seems like that's going to be the case for me in December, which I'm really proud of myself for. So I think with anything I do, I have a lot of passion to dedicate the amount of time and energy that I need to do the best that I can. So I've really been able to section out my days, a lot of long nights, a lot of studying, but I'm passionate about it. And yeah, I think because I'm so driven to do well, it's hasn't felt like a chore to stay up and study and do what I need to do. And um, it's felt like forever, but I'm nearing the finish line, so I'm really excited about that.
Well, congratulations. I mean, that is especially, I mean, you were already online, but I know obviously with the pandemic had hit us all. I know a lot of people had to move to the online schooling. So you were already a step of the game, ahead of the game. So I know that, you know, it is very hard to manage athletics and also academics at the same time. Do you have a blueprint or something you would recommend to young tennis players or even athletes in general? How do you some of the mantras that you use or the philosophies that you actually practice every single day in order to become a really good student athlete?
Um, I don't have a specific mantra. I think one thing that I've benefited from in the last, I want to say maybe 2 to 3 years, is using a planner. I wasn't somebody that ever saw great benefit in having a planner up until one of my friends recommended it to me, and it really made my life so much easier. So I think there's a sense of satisfaction as well when you complete a task. At the end of the day, you kind of check it off your to-do list. At the end of the day, I think psychologically that's something that's beneficial for a lot of people, and I think that's something that's really helped me. And obviously there's some days that I didn't get to finish everything on the list, which is totally fine. You kind of leave it for the next day. So yeah, I think finding that organization is essential, because when you're an athlete and also a student athlete, there's going to be days where the training is harder than others, and you have to dig deep, to come back home and study the amount of hours that you need to complete your task. So if you can have it organized in a planner and know exactly what you're working towards, I think that's something that's really benefited me, and especially in my last 2 to 3 years as a student athlete.
How is your family involved in this whole career, with you in your academics and also with your athletics? I know you said that they're very supportive, but what role do they play in your life currently right now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, with both of my parents being doctors, academics is something that's very valued and sought after in my family. And I think for me personally, I definitely don't want my academic career to finish at a bachelor's degree. I'm going to pursue the highest degree that I can possible. I think that's something that is important to me personally. So, yeah, I mean, my parents are always very proud of everything I do, which I'm super grateful for. I made the dean's list last year, or in 2019, chancellor's list in 2020. Um, I got, I became a member of an honor society this year. So a lot of accomplishments that I know make them proud. It makes me proud. So yeah, I mean, as far as my academics and my tennis, I think, my parents do the best they can to support me and encourage me and push me to be great. So I'm super grateful for that. And I think, seeing how they've accomplished so much in their lives as well pushes me to um have a little bit of that in my life as well.
Now, when we talk about family, I know obviously family is a very important thing. Is That's probably one of the first places where you could gain support from, besides your coaches, your mentors, and your teammates. You know, was there moments in time where you had to not be as active within the family because of your rigorous training or even traveling as well too? Like, were you missing out on certain things? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, a lot of family events I missed, a lot of birthday parties, a lot of weddings, which is very unfortunate. It makes me sad, some of the stuff that I've missed. And I just kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. I think any professional athlete, at the end of the day, your training and your job sometimes comes first. So um, I think my family's very understanding and they know that at the end of the day, if I have to get to a tournament and miss something, it's not because I want to miss it. It's just, my obligation is to first and foremost be a professional athlete. So I think they're very understanding in that regard. And with the pandemic, I've had the opportunity to spend a little bit more time with family, even though we're not necessarily together, but a lot of Zoom calls. I feel like everybody's been celebrating their birthdays on Zoom, so definitely making the most of the time together until I restart playing some tournaments.
Mm. Now, when you are looking at all of this, when everything is put out in front of you, the main thing that comes across to me when it comes down to like a student athlete is where do you get that encouragement from? Where do you get that inspiration from? I know that there's obviously former athletes that you've probably, worked with, you have actually trained with, or even studied under, if that was the case. Where do you get that inspiration from?
Um, I think, a lot of it has to come from yourself. I think I'm naturally a very driven person. And so um I I've never really had someone to tell me to do something. My mom always jokes around that I study too much and my dad pokes fun at it too, but it's like at the end of the day I have a goal and I have a mission to I have a standard for my GPA and I have a standard for my grades and the things that I want to do. So I think, a lot of it has been from internally. I really am a high goal seeking, achieving person. So I think that's helped me a lot. But, with anything, you have to have a lot of family support as well. And so going back to what I said before, I'm grateful that we're a close knit family and we're able to have that support to help each other achieve our dreams. And I think that's a really important aspect when you're trying to move up in life and do great things. It's important to have people around you who believe in you and can push you in the right direction.
Now, looking at that bio of yours, I know you dealt with a lot of adversity at such an early age. Could you tell me some of the biggest challenges you've overcome and how'd you make that happen? How'd you overcome it?
Yeah, so I've faced a lot of injuries throughout my career, and the biggest hurdle I had to overcome was Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2014. So that was probably the hardest thing I ever had to do in my life, but it's also something that I learned a lot from, and I learned a lot about myself and an experience that I feel like I had to go through to evolve as a human being. So I'm always the person that says everything happens for a reason. And so I don't really doubt that that wasn't supposed to happen to me. I think that was set up in my path for me to grow as a human being. So I made the most of it. And yeah, I think, with any injuries or illnesses, it kind of comes back to going back to the drawing board. A lot of athletes, there's a lot of up and downs associated with the sport and with the lifestyle. And it's how are you going to react to some of those setbacks? And I think for me, I'm a naturally optimistic person. And whenever I've had those setbacks, I've always kind of figured that everything's going to be okay. And eventually everything is okay. So as long as I have the passion in my belly to keep pushing and keep going forward, then that's all I'm going to do. And hopefully achieve some of the same dreams that I have for myself.
Mm, okay. And obviously, as an athlete, we're gonna always be met with some type of challenge in front of us. You know, is there a match that you went through or a moment in time that you could kind of pinpoint? Give us like paint us a picture of like how you actually like fought through it.
There's not a specific moment that I can think of. I mean, for instance, going through my injuries, I think a lot of it was kind of going back to routines and mindset. I think, it's okay to have moments of doubt. I think everybody does, but it's important to bounce back from that and kind of have an optimistic point of view, because at the end of the day, like, what we're trying to do as professional athletes is very difficult. And so if you make it harder on yourself with your negativity, or, which I'm guilty of at times, I'm not positive all the time, but I try to, as much as I can, focus on the positive things. And I think, there's not like a specific match or a specific moment that I can think of. It's just a continuous mindset of, learning from experiences, learning maybe why those injuries happen and how to correct them next time, seeing different specialists to figure out, can we prevent something from happening in the future? And so I think, there's a lot of, you just see different people, see who can help you. And I think that's something that I've done throughout my career. I've settled on somebody who I trust a lot now and who I think can really help me with my body and my injuries and flexibility and strength. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the future holds for me. And I think I'm in a position where hopefully I can have a little bit of the success that I had prior to my illness and injuries and all of that.
I know that the listeners are very appreciative of the information that you're sharing with us today and about your journey and the adversity and the things you've gone through. With Zaka being an inspirational platform for the immigrant community, what would be your biggest advice for like a young girl who's pursuing that dream like yourself at the age of 7 to be a professional tennis player? What was something you would pass on to her?
Oh, that's always a loaded question.
Don't worry.
I I don't know if there's a specific way to answer this, but I think at the end of the day, you have to love what you do. And I think for me, there's been moments where I didn't enjoy what I did just because of injuries and illnesses. And when you feel like your body's working against you, that's really hard. But I think when I was younger, I really loved being out there and I loved competing so much that it was, it felt awesome to be out there on the court. So I think, my biggest advice to any young player, any child really starting in tennis, is to make sure you're really having fun and enjoying it. Because I think, with anything in life, if you enjoy what you do, it doesn't feel like a job. For an athlete, if eventually their career becomes their job, if you play basketball or tennis or soccer or anything, and you started as a junior to see where it goes, and then you're like, oh, I'm good enough to make a career out of this. I think finding the reason why you're doing it is always important. So I think for me personally, when I've faced adversity, I've always kind of gone back to why did I start tennis? Why did I love tennis? And kind of tapping into some of that, and then it recenters you, and you remind yourself why you're putting in all the work every day, and why you still want to achieve those dreams. So I think for any young player, it's to really enjoy the small moments, enjoy the ups and downs, and make the most of it. Hopefully there's good family support as well. I think that's very important. But I think the most important thing is to just enjoy what you do.
That is that is probably one of the most valuable things that we could pass on to our youth, just truly enjoying what you do. A lot of people and adults, they've probably reached a place in their career where they're just like, it's just they're just going through the routine. They're just going to work or just doing what they think is best for them versus what they want to do. So at a young age, you found out your passion and your love. It was tennis, and you've been just pursuing it. And despite all the things that you have gone through, in order to reach this level of professionalism, reach this level in your career, you never gave up. And a lot of that mindset that you carry from just your, like you said, about from your family, having that sense of pride, that Haitian culture, and traveling it through your academics and what you're doing, doing the studying and schooling and also the athletics. It just goes to show you, it speaks volumes to the person, the character and the athlete that you truly are, you know. So
Thank you
kudos
so much.
that, because some people just truly would search their whole lives and never find what they truly are passionate about, and you're passionate about it. I know that there's going to be a point in time in your life where you're going to be sharing more of that your story and more, doing things in your community. Maybe you go back to Port-au-Prince and open up your own tennis camp for the students out there and get them involved. I know tennis is a big thing in your life, and I know you're always actively involved in it. But what do you do on your spare time when you're not playing tennis, when you're not on the court, when you don't got the tennis racket in your hand? Like, what are you actually doing? Because Zaka is looking to follow you in your journey in this video series in the near future. So, like, what are some of the things that you do?
When I'm not on the court, I am at my desk studying. So essentially, if I'm not at my desk studying, then I am painting. I paint a lot. It's a hobby that I really enjoy. I'm not very good, but it's something that whenever I have the free time, I try to do. Along with the art, I draw as well. Sometimes I sketch some things. I did a podcast a little bit last year just for fun to see if I liked it. And it's something I really enjoyed actually. So I think further down the line, I'm going to consider having my own podcast. I think that's a hobby that I would really enjoy. I have a piano. I'm looking at it right now. Sometimes I do that. Free time is very scarce in my life, as you can imagine. But yeah, if I'm not sitting or on the court, I generally try to do one of those hobbies. I'm fortunate enough to live relatively close to a beach. So whenever I need a little bit of a recharge, take my umbrella, go to the beach, park up on the sand, and just kind of enjoy an afternoon. So it kind of really just depends how I'm feeling. As you can imagine, whenever I have some free time, I want to be as still as possible to rest my muscles. But yeah, some of those hobbies I really enjoy, and I try to do a little bit of it each week.
Oh, wow. You are a woman of many talents. Let me just say that right here. Listeners, I hope you're actually paying close attention to this, because this is a young lady who does not stop. Like, I don't even know if you have enough hours in the day. But you're finding a way to make that happen. I know that Zaka, is going to be doing their podcast. Definitely, I know they would love to have you on their podcast, and you can have your own podcast with Zaka. I know that. I know that the guys would love to, work with you on that. Now, my last couple of things to you. I know that we're rounding up on the end of our interview with you, and I'm so blessed to have heard your story actually from you and not reading it, and actually hearing your story. And I know that the listeners are very blessed and very pleased to hear that stuff. You gave us a lot of great information about, like, just some of the things that you do, the practices, the steps that you have taken. You're kind of giving that blueprint. Again, Zaka is a strong platform. And as Zaka continues to grow within the community and across the world, your story, this interview right here, is going to reach hundreds and thousands of people, and I want you to know that your words definitely mean something here at Zaka in our community. And we greatly appreciate you just being on the show and just kind of being with us. I know that you had to kind of probably had to step away from just the practicing, or maybe you had some other things to take care of, but you're here with us, so we're very blessed to have you here. Is there any last words you would like to share with the listeners right now? Obviously people want to follow you in your journey. They definitely could, visit zakaconnect.com. But is there anything you else want to share with the listeners before we end our interview?
No, just to wrap up on what you said before, obviously, I really appreciate this opportunity. I think it's important work what you guys are doing to kind of showcase some of these stories from people with different backgrounds and different cultures. I think it's a beautiful thing. There's so many stories in tennis where you don't know what the person has gone through or what their journey has been. Everybody has a journey, and I think anytime someone can talk about it and showcase it, I think it helps other people. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here and to share my story. And sharing my story is something that I usually don't really do, but I know that a lot of people enjoy my story. I guess it's just me not being, I just don't like talking about myself, if that makes sense. But I think it's important to talk about these things. And yeah, so I'm currently restarting my tennis journey, and I was sidelined by a couple injuries last year, so I'm restarting again. I'm actually going to my first tournament on Friday, which I'm super excited about. um
Yes.
yeah, so restarting,
Yes.
we're back
Yes.
on the horse. We're back
You
on the
better
horse.
get it, girl. Come on now. I'm out here rooting for you over here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm healthy again, back in the swing of things. So starting Friday, just kind of getting the ball rolling, and then yeah, hopefully, playing some couple tournaments in Europe. I know with COVID, the travel restrictions are a little bit interesting, but yeah, the goal is to do some tournaments in Europe, get ready, come back to the States afterwards, hopefully play in the US Open again, a place that I cherish very much. I've had a lot of great memories there. So yeah, I think for me, it's just getting back into the swing of things and enjoying opportunities like this one to talk about my story.
And just know that your story is very valuable to a lot of people. Don't feel like you can't share that, or you shouldn't share it, because honestly, there are so many people that want to know how to do it. They just don't know how to do it. They don't know. They don't have a starting point. I believe in, success will always leave some type of fun foundation or some type of clue, and for us to follow those things. So people want to know about your journey, so sharing it with here at Zaka. What is that next step after tennis, if I may ask? Because I know you're just getting back into the swing of things. I know you have a long lifespan within this career, this profession. But I know you mentioned there's a lot of things that you love to do. Is there anything you forecast doing after tennis? Is there anything like you want to start coaching? You want to open up your own camp, your own facility? Is there something that you see yourself doing in the near future? I'm sorry, not in the near future, in your future with tennis?
Um, Ooh, I'm not really sure. I think I'm probably gonna be the person that once my tennis career is over, I'm gonna try to pursue something completely different. I have a lot of interest in media. So I think, doing something with TV or broadcasting is something I would be interested in. As I mentioned before, I want to keep, achieving higher levels of my academic career. So I think um, I'm not gonna maybe do my MBA online. I think I'm gonna focus on my tennis for the next couple years, make the most of it, and then once I'm done with that, I think go to a university on campus. I think my academics could get me into a really good university, so I want to make the most of that by using a university that I can go to campus instead of online, because the options are a little bit limited online. So I think for me, after my tennis, it's going to be chasing my academics as high as I want to go. And then, kind of tapping into some different fields in sports. I do know that I want to stay in sports, but maybe sports media, maybe a little bit of real estate. I mean, I love real estate as well. So I definitely feel like I'm scatterbrained as far as what I want to do, but it's probably not necessarily a bad thing to feel like you have a lot of options. So I'll definitely cross that bridge when I get there.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Victoria, for joining us on Zaka. Again, listeners, if you want to know more about her story and obviously about the other individuals as well too that we're interviewing, definitely go to www.zakaconnect.com, and you guys will hear all the wonderful things that's going on here at Zaka, and also about this young lady and her journey. So again, Victoria, we're going to say thank you again for joining us today. All the best at your next match, and the many, many more years to come. All the best as well too. Thank you again for joining us here in Zaka.
Thank you so much, Paul. Have a good one.